Alright, gang, StatKing here again with another recap of Dark and Powerrr. AEW Dark was in Garland, Texas. NWA Powerrr's in the GPP studios. Powerrr is coming off of a really great Into the Fire pay-per-view. If you haven't already, please make sure that you take a look at the Into the Fire review that we have on the YouTube page. I did that review. And now we're starting off Season 2 of NWA Powerrr. There is a rematch announced from pay-per-view, Ken Anderson and Eli Drake, but now that match is going to be a no disqualification match. Also, we're going to have Rock and Roll Express in action. But starting the show off is Aaron Stevens. He comes out with question mark. There's a lot of boos for Stevens. He says that he should now be addressed as Shooter Stevens for his wrestling prowess, and he also puts over his karate abilities. He has added. He says he is the first American to have gotten to a third-degree black belt. He has reached the third-degree black belt faster than any American previously, and he has put those three yellow stripes, onto the NWA national title to represent that. The crowd is definitely not behind Aaron Stevens whatsoever, and when Colt Cabana comes out to interrupt, the crowd is definitely pro-Colt. It doesn't look like this feud is going to be over, but we'll see what happens with this. It's kind of interesting as they were leaving Thunder Rosa, as Colt is leaving the area, so is Aaron Stevens in question mark. Thunder Rosa comes out, and she gets the crowd up on their feet for Melina. Melina comes out, but before they can really cut a promo or do anything, Ashley Vox comes out and attacks them. As you'll remember from the pay-per-view, Ashley Vox attacked Thunder Rosa after Thunder Rosa beat Tasha Steelz, and Thunder Rosa injured Ashley Vox, forcing Allison Kay to team with the debuting ODB for the tag match between Allison Kay, ODB, and Melina and Marty Bell. So before the heels are able to they turn the tides now that Ashley Vox is attacking them. It's 2-on-1. But before they can really injure Ashley Vox further, Allison Kay and ODB come out to make the save. They cut backstage, and Thunder Rosa and Melina get mad at Marty Bell for not coming to help them, but Marty insinuates that she wasn't even watching because Melina had told her not to come out. And Melina has a good line where she says, "Don't do what I tell you to do. Do what I need you to do." You know, like kind of saying, "Hey, you should have been watching regardless. And as soon as you saw what was going on, even though I told you not to come out, you come out and back us up." So at the pay-per-view, they debuted the TV title. Now they're announcing what's going to happen to determine the first television champion. They're going to have a tournament. Well, not the first television champion, but who will now hold the title. So each match is going to be 6 minutes and 5 seconds long. That may seem weird, but NWA Powerrr starts at 6:05 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So they are tying into the fact that it's a TV title, TV time, and so on and so forth. If a match goes over the allotted time, both competitors will be eliminated from the tournament. So there's a triple threat for the final spot in the tournament. They haven't revealed any of the other competitors, but in this triple threat is Saul Renaro, C.W. Anderson, and Zicky Dice. Zicky Dice is absolutely hilarious. Dude has this outlandish chant. He's just like, outlandish! And at first the crowd is like, what the hell is going on? But then they start to eat it up. It's a really quick match. He pins Renaro with a rude awakening. After the match, he goes to the interview desk and introduces himself. He's cutting a promo, and the Dawsons come out, and they interrupt and kind of get Zicky out of there. They say that they're pissed at the wild cards. They did the wild cards' dirty work and were promised title shots and opportunities and money that they were supposed to have received, but they have received neither. So they say that there's a conspiracy, and before they can go further, the wild cards are out with chairs, and the Dawsons kind of flee. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about during the pay-per-view, during my review of the pay-per-view, where it seemed a little weird that Eddie Kingston and Homicide were backing up Rock and Roll Express and the Dawsons are backing up Wildcard, unless the two teams backing up the title match contenders were promised something. So I guess maybe Eddie Kingston and Homicide did it because of respect for R&R, but the Dawsons did it because Wildcards promised them something. They're not going to be able to receive that. Now they're pissed. So the Wildcards come out with chairs. Dawsons flee. Dawson's maybe turning face. I don't know. Let's see what happens. They kind of have a good look to be heel. They have a good look to be a heel team, but we'll see how the booking is for it. So they show Marty's promo after the Into the Fire pay-per-view, where Marty Scurll showed up on NWA to the shock and surprise of a lot of people, basically everybody, because everybody thought he was going straight to AEW after his contract finished with Ring of Honor. It's a really strong promo that he cuts here. It's about how he does what he wants. He's come up short against Aldis when they face each other at the Crockett Cup, but he knows he can beat Aldis, so he's going to seek a shot at the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, and he's coming for Aldis, and he's going to give him the match of his life. So Eddie Kingston's now out on commentary, and he gives an update on Homicide, who was injured when the Dawsons and Kingston and Homicide got into a brawl during that title match at Into the Fire. Meanwhile, Rock and Roll Express are in the ring. They dispatch a jobber team with ease. After the match, they get interviewed, and it's kind of, I'm getting a sense throughout the company that the faces are starting to get tired of Aldis constantly bragging about himself. Ricky Morton, they ask Ricky Morton about what he thinks about Aldis's actions, because Aldis had cut a promo, was in the middle of cutting a promo after he beat James Storm when Marty Scurll shows up. And so there's kind of this tension between the faces where Aldis is starting to get a little full of himself, and the other faces are why, we don't understand why. Yes, he's good, yes, he's winning, but it's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit going beyond where it should be. So even now, Ricky Morton's starting to notice that. He brings that up. The Dawsons come back out. They're still getting chased by the Wildcards. It's a little bit of a Scooby-Doo moment. The next pay-per-view is revealed to be coming on January 24th. It's going to be called Hard Times, after the infamous Dusty Rhodes promo. And now the Wildcards and the Dawsons are going to have a match. It's actually longer than the previous matches. The previous two matches were quite short. Really nice tag match. It ends with the Wildcards winning. Nice pinning combination. And they cut a promo after the match about how, if I remember right, the promos basically that the Dawsons are liars. So now Josephus is out in a Santa costume. I don't know if you remember, but it happened before True Heel Heat started doing reviews of Powerrr, but Josephus was suspended for parts of 2019, and now he's out seeking to get that suspension lifted, and he's tossing merch into the crowd to try to get the crowd on his side. Maybe that'll convince Billy Corgan and NWA management, Lagana, that he should be reinstated. They show an interview with James Storm from right after the title match. It's a really great interview. So Aldis had exposed a turnbuckle, and James Storm went headfirst into it. So he's got a mark on his head. It's not bleeding. It's a little bloody, but it's not leaking or anything like that. But he calls attention to that. He calls attention to the fact that his referee, who had won the coin toss to officiate the third and final fall, had been knocked out, and it was actually Tim Storm making the refereeing the decision. And so he's saying that's not fair either. It was my guy. And so, a really strong promo. You can feel the energy there from James Storm, and you can kind of tell Storm's not, he's not giving up on going after Aldis in the world title. So now the participants come out for the TV title tournament. We've got Ricky Starks, Colt Cabana, Trevor Murdoch, Zicky Dice, Thomas Lattimore of the Wildcards, The Question Mark, Eddie Kingston, Tim Storm, both of the Dawsons, and strangely, Nick Aldis. We have a really great appearance from Nikita Koloff awesome to see a Hall of Famer, a legend, come back. He held the TV title, and he puts over the belt, the championship, and talks about what it means to be the TV champion and how he's really interested in seeing who will win the tournament. We get an announcement that it's going to be Starks versus Kingston and Colt versus Question Mark announced for next week. I like that they're doing something. I don't know whether Homicide's injury is legit. I don't know whether he's just not available for the TV tapings. I don't know what exactly the plan is there, but assuming either way, whether it's a storyline or a legitimate injury, it's nice that they're keeping Eddie Kingston in the mix by having him in the tournament. So all this goes to the interview desk, and he actually brings Ricky Starks with him. He cuts a promo on how he wants to be the first person to hold the TV title and the world title at the same time. He puts over Starks, but then he says, he brings up the fact that previously, in past episodes, he said that Ricky Starks would be his #1 draft pick. But he says that he thinks that Starks can go far in the tournament. Starks can even make it to the finals, where he will lose to Nick Aldis. And as expected, Ricky Starks does not take kindly to this. But then they shift the questioning to Marty. And I will say it gets a little awkward because Ricky Starks is still standing right there. And he's just listening to what's happening, and he doesn't really have much of an input. He didn't have any input beforehand outside of, facial expressions and just looking at all this as though, like, what are you talking about? Like, I could beat you. And now, so they kind of, instead of from a wide shot, they kind of bring it in closer so that you kind of forget that Ricky Starks is still technically standing there. I guess for the studio audience, maybe they saw Ricky Starks walk away. But anyway, all this says that he'll beat Marty again, and that after the Into the Fire pay-per-view, after everything that happened with Camille, she is no longer his insurance policy. So there's some tension there. From that interview, they cut to a pre-taped interview with Stu Bennett and Marty, and it's kind of more of the same from Marty talking about, people thought he was going to go there, so he came here, Think you're going to zig, that's when you zag. So now Tim Storm is out on commentary for the main event, and they ask him about what he thinks about Aldis and Skrull, and he says he does want to see a match between Skrull and Aldis. Eli Drake and Ken Anderson have a really great match. Really great no DQ match. It goes all over the studio. There's chairs involved. There's a really nice moment where, so up at the top of where the audience sits, they have a kind of a landing, and that's where people were coming out during the pay-per-view and walking down the steps through the crowd. So they have posters there with people's faces on. Aldis, Allison Kay, Colt Cabana. One of them's Eli Drake. So Anderson has a moment where he's bashing in Eli, and he's like kind of making him look at his own face, and he's gonna throw him into it. So, but just a really, really solid match. Not a long match, but they get the spots in that they need to get. Gravy Train ends the match. Eli picks up the win. After the match, Nick Aldis comes out and gets in Tim Storm's face. Storm gets into the ring. He's taking off his jacket. He's getting ready to fight. Like, he's like saying, you want to fight? Let's fight. So Tim is egging Aldis on. Aldis gets in the ring. The wild cards come out and they start beating on Storm. Aldis does nothing to stop them. So what's going on here? We know that the wild cards are heel. Tim Storm's a face. That's Mama Storm's baby boy. Aldis is a face. Aldis is supposed to be friends with Tim Storm, even though he's having this disagreement with him right now. What is going on? So Storm goes into a corner to recover from everything that's happening, protect himself. Camille comes out, takes off the heels, gets in the ring. gets right into Nick's face, backs him into a corner, into the opposing corner of the ring. From where Storm is, she's just arguing, poking him in the chest and everything. Turns around, hits a spear on Tim Storm. Ridiculous. She starts making out with her real-life boyfriend, Thomas Latimer of the Wildcards. Nick Aldis has turned heel, ladies and gentlemen, and Powerrr ends with this new faction celebrating in the ring. Really great episode. I'm thinking that where they're going with this is Marty is kind of a placeholder feud while Colt finishes up with Aaron Stevens and maybe Eli Drake and Ken Anderson goes another round. Maybe. I'm not sure how they can continue the feud. Eli's beaten him twice, and one was a no disqualification match. So there's got to be something that keeps it going, and let's not forget James Storm is still waiting. So I can see a situation where James Storm's seething in the background, Marty is the one who gets the shot, maybe at Hard Times. Yeah, I would assume Hard Times. I'm not thinking that they're going to have a title match so soon, because they're going to be coming back. I mean, we have a couple days. Next week is Christmas, and then after that, New Year's, January 24th is the pay-per-view. Give you a little bit of time to build. That'll give Marty time to, once he finishes up with that pay-per-view, that maybe will allow him some time to just rest, get everything straight on his end before he joins up with AEW, maybe debuts at the Revolution pay-per-view. That's going to be here in Chicago on, I think it's February 29th at the Wintrust Arena, which is a really cool place in downtown. But anyway, so I think that we're switching because Marty's not going to get booed, despite being called the villain, being supposed to be a bad guy, a CEO of an evil company of the Villain Enterprises. He's not going to get booed by this crowd. No crowd, like the crowds that are coming for NWA Powerrr, they're not going to boo him. He's not a traditional heel in that sense, and so it makes sense to have Aldis turn heel. Also, they teased the match between Aldis and Muta, and I think if they do have that match down the road, Muta's also somebody else who's not going to get booed, especially not in America, and it's easier for Aldis to play a heel than it is whether he's naturally going to be getting booed in the match. They can do a face versus face match, but let's keep Aldis interesting and switch up the character a little bit, add more of that, traditional kind of smarmy bad villain champion that older wrestling is kind of famous for, right? Like he now can easily transition into a modern day NWA Ric Flair. So they've kind of set themselves up very well. It's a really great kickoff for season 2. And now let's move over to Dark. AEW Dark, coming from Garland, Texas. This is a really good episode. I liked it a lot. There are 4 matches on this card. Private Party versus SCU. Britt Baker versus Machiko. Thea Priestley versus Chris Statlander. And then Best Friends and Orange Cassidy versus Pac and the Hybrid 2. Vicky Guerrero is going to be out on commentary. It's kind of a really nice reveal. She does the excuse me. The crowd is like, wait a minute. We know that voice. we know this phrase. We know this tone. This can't be. But yes, it is. It is Vicky Guerrero, and she gets a nice pop from the crowd. Commentary is going to be a little awkward while she's there with the whole cougar kind of character gimmick, and I think it's been a while since she's been on commentary, and I don't remember her really being on commentary in WWE, and it's not really that much of a strong suit for her, but she does all right. So Private Party and SCU kickoff. Really, I gotta say, solid open. Great spots between the teams. I think everybody watching this review kind of knows what kind of match this is going to be. It's two great teams given time to do what they can do. SCU picks up the win ahead of the match against the Bucks on Dynamite, the title match, the very next day. Next day in airtime. Just great match and really good build for the next day. Speaking of the next day, there's going to be a match between Britt Baker and Chris Statlander to determine who will be the number one contender for Riho. So now we can have two women's matches, and they're both designed to build these women up ahead of their title match. Really good booking on behalf of AEW. Britt and Machiko are out next. I don't know too much about Machiko, but she's looks like she can handle herself in the ring. It's a decent match, but quick, very quick. Then Statlander transitions almost immediately into Statlander versus Priestley. This is a bit longer of a match, but it's good. The Dallas roll or Oklahoma roll. It's, they hook the legs and you're going around and around the ring, and I think it's not. I'm just not a big fan of the move. Not because I don't like the move, but it's just more along the lines of, it's kind of like the Cesaro swing to me. It's okay. You're swinging the. After the fifth or sixth time, I get the point of it. Unless it's Cesaro trying to swing somebody like fucking Mark Henry, then yes, do it a bajillion times, because I'm amazed about the fact that you can get Mark Henry up. but with some of these rolls, sometimes it just goes a little bit too long. But other than that, great match. What I liked about it, though, is that Britt won her match very quickly. Statlander took a longer time. And Britt, while she is definitely not a super experienced competitor, she is by far the more experienced when it comes to an AEW ring and AEW crowd than Chris Statlander. So they've already had Britt Baker challenge Riho before. They've already built her up. So it makes sense that she's beating her opponent faster than Chris Statlander beats hers. Also, Chris Statlander's opponent is Bea Priestley, who we know that Britt Baker's had issues with in the past. So it's kind of a good, anything you can do, I can do. Chris Statlander's beating an old foe, Britt Baker's. It takes her a bit of time, but she's there. She's ready to face Britt, but they have to cater to the fact that Britt's a little bit more of an established act when it comes to AEW crowds. Really great promo from Statlander after the match. It is a little weird, I will say, the whole alien thing. I think it's... So I know they don't want to change characters or change people's gimmicks from what brought them to the dance, right? Like, you didn't get signed to... Chris Statlander didn't get signed to AEW because her character is a farmhand who likes to fight. Part of the reason why she got signed is because of the whole alien character, the whole alien gimmick. So you don't want to move away from that. But some things do translate better on television than they do on the indie scene. And I think that they made I think it was the elevator. I don't know if that was Dark or Dynamite, but the elevator promo, that was, it just seems, something about it seems a little off. So maybe they'll be able to kind of work out a couple of the kinks in the future. But Statlander in the ring, absolutely great. So the main event is a banger. This match is phenomenal. The crowd is ridiculously hyped for these teams. They're super hyped for Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy gets this tag in. That pop is absolutely ridiculous. Does his hands in the pockets, starts zooming around the ring, giving the people what they want to see. Orange Cassidy beating the crap out of people in weird and innovative ways that do not involve him using his hands or losing his cool or doing much of anything somehow. The man is a god of wrestling, I say. Out of all the matches I watched for Dark and for Powerrr, this is by far the best. Really great work from all the teams involved. So Dark, I think, is starting to pick up steam again. Some great matches. I'm interested to see what they'll do for next week, because next week they'll be taping the Dark. It's the only AEW that will have new AEW that we will have next week due to Christmas falling on Wednesday. So it'll be interesting to see what matches they tape and whether or not it's kind of a mini Dynamite explosion instead of a regular Dark. So see you guys next week. StatKing signing off. Thanks for watching, guys.